It's my pleasure to be your driver and tour guide today. We'll spend about 35 to 40 minutes together on this tour, depending on which animals are out and about. And we'll see about 70% of the San Diego Zoo. So at the end of this tour, you'll have a pretty good idea of where else you want to go and spend your time during your visit today. Hi, Jody. You can see some of our wonderful volunteers hanging out here in the main plaza in those red polo shirts. You'll find them around the zoo as well. Please feel free to flag them down if you need directions, recommendations, if you want some great animal facts. They're here for the same reason that you are. They love animals. All right. So before we get into the good stuff, here's my quick safety announcement. You'll see that as we drop down into this canyon, the bus does pass close to some large plants and buildings, sometimes some big vehicles as well. So for your safety and my driving record, please keep your arms, legs, loved ones, and personal belongings inside the bus and remain seated while we're in motion. Now, anytime I stop the bus, feel free to stand up, move around, take pictures, take videos, hug your neighbor, dance in the aisle, whatever you need to do to have a good time today. This is a judgment-free bus. Just don't get me fired. All right. So one of the ways that we like to engage with our guests is to sort of remind them that for a long time, zoos were really just places to come and see animals. That's all they were, and they were profit-making entities. Well, now that's kind of changed, right? For example, we're a nonprofit organization, and we're focused on conservation. If animals are here, they're here for a specific conservation reason, and we're going to talk about some of those reasons during our tour today. Is there a tiger in that tree? I think there is. So on the right-hand side here, folks, this looks like Connor. He is one of our male Malayan tigers, just in the center of the habitat there under the tree. Getting a little bit of a late breakfast here. So it's really exciting to be here and spending time with tigers because 100 years ago we had 9 species of tigers in the world. Now we're down to just 6. And each remaining tiger species is either endangered or critically endangered. These Malayan tigers are critically endangered, so only a few hundred of them left in the wild. So the work that we're doing with tigers is really important. The big threat that they face in the wild is that they're just losing their habitat. Right? All jungle species live in Asia. This species lives in Southeast Asia, Malaysia specifically, and a lot of their habitat is being lost to palm oil plantations. Some of you may have heard of that in relation to orangutan habitat being lost as well. So one thing that we can all do to help out tigers in the wild, we can try to just buy products that don't include palm oil. If we do need to buy products that include palm oil, we can try to make sure that they are certified sustainable. There are a few organizations that do that. So you can look for that labeling on the packaging. Just kind of a little thing that we can do.
Here it is, Etta.
Sometimes it's a little difficult to talk about what we on one side of the world can do to help a species that's struggling on the other side of the world, because it feels like that's kind of disconnected. Maybe it's not our problem, but all of these palm oil plantations that are being grown and replace tiger habitat and orangutan habitat, they're grown to make palm oil mainly for products that are consumed by people in wealthy countries like the United States. So we are, in a way, driving these changes, and so it's really good that we're mindful about the chains of events that end up causing trouble for some of these species and how we can get involved. This is our hippo habitat on the right-hand side, but unless they're up on the beach here, it's not very easy to see the hippos. You folks on the lower deck, if you want, you can kind of look to the right here, and you'll get a bit of view of 2 of our hippos underneath the water there. Depending on where you're sitting, you might have a slightly better view. Folks on the upper deck might be a little bit tougher for you. So right now it looks like Our mama and daughter hippos are in the pool. On alternating days, we have the two of them, or we have Otis, the big daddy, 4,000 pounds of hippo. So you get some different hippo action coming on different days. So we talked a little bit about the Southeast Asian rainforest when we met Connor the tiger. Let's see if we can find some other animals from Southeast Asia. So also on the right-hand side here, we have two species of monkeys, Allen's swamp monkeys and spot-nosed guenons. And you can see a little baby there toward the left-hand side of this woody jungle gym, an older monkey toward the middle, and looks like another juvenile monkey off to the right standing on top of the bushes. And there may be some more that I can't see from the driver's seat. So the big threat that these monkeys are facing in Southeast Asia is actually not habitat loss, it's that a lot of people eat them. That might sound a little strange to some of us, but you know, humans have been eating animals for millions of years, wild animals. It's actually eating domesticated animals like we do here in the United States, cows and pigs and chickens. That's a lot more unusual, and the conditions that those animals are kept in can be pretty, can be pretty bad. So, you know, in a lot of parts of the world, wild animals are eaten very regularly. The challenge comes in when those animals are threatened or endangered, like these monkey species are. So we're learning how to have those conversations with our conservation partners in Southeast Asia, because as an American organization, you know, we don't want to go into another country and try to tell them how they should live their lives, right? We don't have that kind of authority. But we can have conversations about wildlife conservation, because every culture on Earth, you know, wants to preserve their local wildlife, right? That's wildlife that sustains them and gives them, you know, meaning and a sense of continuity in the natural world. So we can have these conversations without judgment, and that's a good place to start. All right, any fans of birds on the bus today? Yeah, like one of you, mildly enthusiastic. That's cool. So on the left-hand side here, some of you have noticed Africa Marsh with some beautiful African flamingos there. Later in the year, when they start munching on more shrimp and things with beta-carotene in them, then they'll get a little bit more pink. On the right-hand side, up ahead, you can see Eagle Trail. That's where a lot of our largest birds live. We have some eagle species there, as well as Andean condors, the largest scavenging birds in the world. And then back on the left-hand side, not trying to hurt your necks here, we have some more African birds. You can see some great white pelicans to the left of the pond there on the ground. On the little nest in the middle of the pond, you can see some cormorants. We actually have some native cormorants here as well. And we have a different species of zebras living in urban jungle. And some more up north at the safari park. These zebras have been here at the zoo longer than almost any other species. You can tell because they're still in black and white.
Oh my god.
Just kidding. That pattern, we think, is actually to help them avoid being eaten by predators on the African savanna, like lions. When you have a big herd of zebras moving around together, it can become disorienting visually for predators, and sometimes those lions or those other animals end up going away without dinner. So it's a good defensive strategy that zebras and lots of other animals use. All right. This is our polar habitat on the left-hand side, so let's take a moment here. Feel free to stand up if you like, and we'll see if we can find any polar bears on the left. Now, we don't see them on all of our tours, so if you're not seeing any bears, don't feel too bad about it. Sometimes they're in the water, sometimes on the rocks. How about up top? Can you folks give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down if we're seeing any polar bears? I'm seeing some thumbs down. Lower deck? No? All right, let's keep on going. Mammals with the ringed horns are called bantabak. They come from South Africa. and we nearly lost this species. They were down to just 17 individuals. A rancher in South Africa realized that their numbers were getting low and decided to do something about it. He welcomed all 17 Bontebok onto his land and protected them, while petitioning the government of South Africa to open a national wildlife refuge to protect the species. From his actions, this entire species was saved from extinction. From that population of 17, we now have more than 3,000 Bontebok in the wilds of South Africa, and those numbers are rising. So there are about 90 of us on this bus right now. My challenge to each of you is that as you make your way around the zoo today, find a species that really speaks to you, like Bontebok spoke to this rancher. Learn a little bit about the challenges that that species is facing in the wild, and figure out a little something that you can do about it. It's a great way to stay involved with wildlife conservation, and it really does make a huge difference. We need all hands on deck. Southern Gerenuk on the right-hand side here, so well adapted to the droughts of the African savanna that they can go their entire lives without a single drink of water. They get everything they need just from the leaves that they eat. And as climate change continues to create drought conditions around the world, including here in Southern California, it's going to be really important that we learn from these drought-tolerant species everything that we can. These are Chicoan peccaries. You might recognize them as relatives of Pumbaa the warthog from the movie Lion King, but they actually come from South America, mainly Chile, and they are one of the many endangered species here at the zoo. In this case, the situation is similar to what tigers are going through. These Chicoan peccaries are just losing a lot of their forest habitat. So really important that we're being mindful here as consumers of wood and paper products, that those products are being harvested sustainably from trees in South America. Cool little garden here. A lot of folks miss this, but I always like to point it out on my tours. This is called the bog, and it's where our carnivorous plants live. So these are plants that eat animals, and that's pretty unusual in the plant kingdom. But I'm sure you've all heard of Venus flytraps. We have several other species of carnivorous plants here, like pitcher plants from several different continents. This area of the zoo, this little corner, also doesn't get a lot of attention. So if you're feeling a little claustrophobic today, there's too many people out, this is a nice place to come and hide, just hang out with some really cool plants for a while. Are any of you folks visiting us from North or South Carolina by any chance? No? Folks on the upper deck? All right, that's the only place left that you can find Venus flytraps in the wild, if you ever find yourself in that part of the country. Rock hyraxes on the left-hand side here, another South African species. Believe it or not, the closest living relative to these rock hyrax is the African elephant. So these are like little tiny furry elephants without trunks. Manatees are also a member of that family, so it's an interesting little scientific classification. These are also some of the most romantic animals at the zoo. Males compose and sing totally unique songs to females to attract their attention, and hopefully have some little rock hyrax babies. They're just super cute as well. I like to hang out here with them whenever they're out on tour. And coming up on the right-hand side, we have an African mammal you might be more familiar with than the rock hyrax. This is our African lion habitat. Now it looks like we have a nice view of Ellen, our female African lion, on the right-hand side there. Her brother Emmett should also be here somewhere. Did any of you folks see Emmett? Oh, right next to the bus? Okay, thank you. So you folks on the upper deck, especially on the left-hand side, will really have to lean over to the right if you want to see both lions from where you're seated. You know, try not to fall off if possible. So, yeah, they might not be sitting together at the moment, but often Emmett and Ellen kind of cuddle up next to each other on one of these platforms and enjoy the sun. They get along better than any brother or sister that I know among the human species, so, you know, always something to learn from our animal friends. If you're wondering why they're not more active right now, one reason is that lions, like a lot of mammals and almost all cats, are crepuscular. Does anybody know what that word means? Crepuscular? Yes? No? So that just means that an animal is active around sunrise and sunset. Humans are generally diurnal, active during the day, and you all know about nocturnal species like owls and bats and moths. So for diurnal animals like big cats, males can get closer to 200 pounds. Jaguars are the third largest cats in the world after tigers and lions. And you probably know the biggest challenge facing jaguars and other species in the Amazon rainforest. It's deforestation, right? We're losing hundreds of acres of forest in the Amazon rainforest every year for all kinds of different reasons, right? For timber, for mining, for pharmaceutical companies who are extracting medicine from the rainforest, and from coffee. So if any of you folks drink a lot of coffee, one thing that you can do to help out jaguars and other rainforest species is to buy shade-grown coffee. That just means the coffee plants were grown under the existing rainforest canopy rather than clear-cutting entire swaths of forest to make way for coffee plantations. So we get our caffeine fix, the plants and animals get to keep their habitat, kind of a win-win situation. There is an elephant walking around over there, some of you saw, but I'm hoping we can get a better view of some of our elephants in just a moment here. So let's see who else we can find. We do have a view here on the right. Not the best view, but we can stay for just a second. That looks like Mary, one of our Asian female elephants. 57 years old, and elephants do get older than that. She is the undisputed matriarch of the herd of 5 elephants who live here at the zoo. I think she's aging very gracefully. We might get to see her as well from the secretary bird habitat here, especially for you folks on the upper deck. Looks like you might have a view of 2 elephants here. For folks on the lower deck, we can say hello to these beautiful secretary birds, the striking orange coloring around their eyes. These birds come from the African savanna. So Mary, the Asian elephant in the background there, a little bit closer to the bus here, that looks like Shaba, our female African elephant. So we also have 2 male elephants here. They may be in this next habitat over. We can take a look and see. I do like to say a quick word about ivory as we talk about our elephants. Unfortunately, the United States is still the #3 ivory importing country in the world, despite it seems like pretty much everybody knowing the toll that that's taking on elephants in the wild. So I'm sure nobody on this bus is buying or selling ivory products, but you know, help us get the word out there and remind folks that this practice is still going on. It's still having an impact on elephants, and we really need to shut this industry down completely. This is Devi. She is our other female Asian elephant, a little younger than Mary is. You can tell Devi and Mary apart because Devi has that relatively short tail. And let this cart pass us by here. And I'm actually going to pull forward a little bit. We might get a better view on the other side of these rocks. We don't always know which animals are going to be out on tour, but it's pretty reliable that we'll see at least 1 elephant. Very unusual that we'll see all 5 of them like we have today. So, yeah, pretty good tour for wildlife so far. Looks like she's getting a little bit of food. You can see those large structures on the right there. They're called utilitries, and they're really useful for providing different feeding opportunities for elephants. You know, in the wild, they would have to forage for their own food, so it's not a very stimulating experience for them if we just drop a bunch of food on the ground and let them pick it up. So we use these utilitaries to simulate that natural forage here. A really massive bird, if you caught a glimpse of that wingspan for just a second. So, like the Bontebok from South Africa, we nearly lost this species to extinction as well. Back in the 1980s, there were only 22 condors left in existence. Now there are more than 500, and those numbers are growing, and that's because we've been hatching California condor chicks in partnership with some local native bird organizations up north at the safari park. And we won't stop until we can get the numbers of condors back up to a healthy level. And that's well into the thousands. So lots of work left ahead of us. So coming up springers, just one of them in view at the moment, and they come from these rocky areas on the African savanna, like you can see here, called Kopi habitats, K-O-P-J-E, and that's just Swahili for rocky outcropping. Lots of interesting plants and animals that are uniquely adapted to these rocky areas in Africa, and then we have a little trail here that you can kind of wind through and meet different Kopi animals like servals and hornbills, a different species of rock hyraxes, as well as mongoose or mongooses. I'm not really sure which it is. I've been saying mongoose lately. Now this little stretch of road here is not one where we're going to see a ton of animals, but just looking around, you start to get an idea of just how many different species of plants we care for here at the zoo. And that's important, right? There's not a single animal species that could survive without plants. For humans, they do so many things for us. They give us food, shelter, clothing, medicine. They clean our air, our water, our soil. They stabilize our global air temperature. They store carbon in the soil through their roots, which helps to slow down climate change. And of course, they exchange carbon dioxide for oxygen so that we humans and other animals can breathe. So we really owe quite a lot to plants. And you know, if we saved every animal species in our care, but we didn't also look after the plants, it wouldn't really matter, right? It's a whole global ecosystem. We have to look out for all species, not just animals. And for that reason, the San Diego Zoo isn't just a home for animals. We're also one of the largest and most visited botanical gardens in the world. So, well, maybe as you're making your way around the zoo today, you'll decide to stop and give a little bit of love to the plants as well. Alright, so we're making our way down Center Street here. We'll see if we can find any bears. Well, there are two bears, it looks like, in the cave at the rear left-hand corner of this habitat. These are North American grizzlies, the second largest bear species in the world. Can somebody tell me what the largest is? Polar bears, yeah, very good. So these grizzlies range all the way from northern Canada to southern Mexico in some cases, which is a good thing. They have lots of opportunity to get away from humans, which are unequivocally the largest threat to bears around the world. Some of you may remember the California grizzly bear from the California state flag, native to Southern California mainly. Unfortunately, so many humans moved out to Southern California. Always just a good idea to practice that respectful distance, especially from large carnivores. Now this lower part of Center Street is home to the smallest bear in the world, but it's not one that we're going to see on today's tour. The sun bears here at the zoo are kind of tucked into the foliage here, but you can see them if you make your way back here on foot. You can use Huame Cafe as a reference point on your handheld maps and come spend some time with sun bears. Like Malayan tigers, sun bears are one of the critically endangered species that we have here at the zoo. So really important that we're learning about these critically endangered species and figuring out what we can do to help, or in some cases what we need to stop doing so that they can help themselves. Coming up on the left-hand side, way over on the left, we have some South African penguins, another endangered species. You can see some of them standing up on top of the rocks there, probably a bit too far for cell phone cameras, but if you make your way back here to Africa Rocks, you'll know where to find the penguins. Really, this whole area on the right-hand side of the bus, on the left-hand side of the bus, is Africa Rocks. So it goes all the way up to the top of the hill here, really big area. This is our Lemur Habitat coming up on the left. See if we can spot any lemurs. Sometimes they're in the trees here, sometimes on the upper ridge of this rocky ledge here. I'm not seeing any lemurs out today. You know, depending on which animals are out and about, sometimes these tours are a great opportunity to meet lots of animals. Sometimes it's also just a way to orient you folks to the zoo grounds so that you can decide how you want to spend your time here once you're done with the tour. So it looks like on this later part of the tour here, it's a bit more of the latter. And that's okay. Do have a koala up ahead of the bus here. I don't know if you folks can see him. These are male koalas in this first part of this Australian forest habitat. And we have female koalas and joeys up ahead a little bit. We might see some of them as well. But you can kind of look to your right-hand side here and see if you can spot some koalas in between the eucalyptus leaves. I can see one here, up high, awake and actually moving around, which is not always super common for koalas. They can sleep more than 20 hours a day. Some of you folks probably remember those wildfires in Australia last spring. We actually sent teams in to rescue koalas from the fire. We rescued hundreds of them and then returned them to their native habitats once the fire danger passed. So if any of you, my name is Mike. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you all on board today. I'll be hanging out outside of the bus if anyone has questions or comments, and enjoy the rest of your time here at the world-famous San Diego Zoo.
Wait our turn. All of them get to get out. It's just like doing it like everybody in front goes. We're all deaf. We gotta wait our turn. Did you like it, Emmy? Yeah.
She went mine.
I'll do that a picture.
Oh, are they staying, those people? Or what?
I guess.